Family comes first. Nikki Lamb Tudico had never heard these words in a job interview before, not from a potential employer. As a new mother, Nikki was impressed. She must have impressed the interviewers just as much because they hired her. Nikki thrived, using all her marketing skills to launch 2 new television channels, making decisions that mattered along the way. She was in her dream job. A year later, that was all gone. The company that hired her was bought, the leadership changed, and the work culture changed completely too. Nikki felt boxed in. Then a psychic made a comment that nudged Nikki towards a radically different future. Hello and welcome to the Business Heroes, a show where we talk to business owners about their journey. I'm Craig Colby, owner of Colby Vision, a storytelling company. That is Nikki Lamb Tudico. She is the president and owner of the Lamb Creative Group, an award-winning PR and marketing company. Welcome to the show, Nikki. Nikki, let's call you Nikki.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited, and it's hard to not be fired up after that amazing intro with that music too. I feel ready to go.
Makes you feel all badass. Well, you certainly live up to that music. For anybody watching, Nikki is somebody that I really admire. When I was starting my own company, she was one of the first people I talked to because I admired so much what she had accomplished since she had left a company that we both worked at. So Nikki, just tell everybody a little bit about your company, about Lamb Creative Group.
Yeah, great. So Lamb Creative Group, we're an award-winning marketing and PR agency. We service clients across Canada, the US, and Europe. So, we're global, which is really interesting, I think, especially during these kind of crazy times we've had in the past few months, because you really get a perspective of hearing from what different business owners and business leaders are going through, even during difficult times. And it's been really interesting kind of from a marketing perspective. And so we service clients across a number of different verticals within the marketing and PR space, including influencer campaigns, marketing strategy, digital marketing, social media, live and virtual events, branding, pretty much the gamut of everything that falls between marketing and PR.
Beautiful. And you've done really well at it. But I want to start where we started in the little intro, was that job interview you had where they said those words, family comes first. What did you think when you heard your potential employer say that?
It's funny because having gone to, many different interviews in my career, I think I have never in my life heard anybody say that, let alone people who were the heads of a company. And it was kind of like, I think from their perspective, it was, really establishing what the culture was that I was walking into. And as your opening kind of detailed, I was a new mom. My family had grown. I was now juggling motherhood and a career and, life in itself. And so to hear something like that, it really just helped me affirm I was in the right place, because I'd been on a few different interviews and I knew right away when I heard that this was the place I needed to be.
And you got the job.
I did. I lucked out.
Great. And you didn't know that when they said that. So that must have really just amped things up for you. A pretty good motivator.
Absolutely.
And what was that job? Tell us about what that job was.
So I was the marketing communications manager. So for me, at the time, my background had been primarily in PR and communications, but working within the marketing department. So I was still, quite accustomed to all of that kind of activity. This role allowed me to have a little bit more hands-on access to some of the marketing strategy and initiatives. So I was able to help. I think I got thrown into the job. I should say, I hit the ground running because we basically were launching a channel the same month I started. And I think over the course of my time there, launched 2 different channels, a digital magazine, really got some experience in the, trade show space. It was quite an opportunity in terms of, I think, just really expanding generally my skills as a marketer, but also in the digital space. It was a company that just really had strong talent really in digital. So it allowed me to really hone in and build those skills.
Yeah, the company was Glassbox, and they had two broadcast channels at the time, right? It was
That's right.
they had
Byte
Byte and
TV, yeah.
Aux, and then they've got Travel and Escape.
Yeah, so Travel and Escape, I think I started like October 1st and we were launching Travel and Escape at the end of the month.
Right.
So it was quite crazy. And on top of all of that, I had an issue with my first nanny, and I was hiring a nanny and all that. It was just like crazy times, but so much fun, so much energy. And I think, even though I had to hit the ground running, I knew right away I was in the right place, just the energy and the culture and family that was there.
And what did you love about the job?
You know what? I think I love the fact that I was able to learn so much. Like it was really, I would say, a training ground for cultivating learning. So, I feel like we did a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what would stick, but, having the freedom to take risks and try new things, which I didn't feel like I always had the opportunity at the bigger company I was at before. Now we could take risks, but it was much more calculated. There was much more red tape and decision makers that had to weigh in. And so sometimes a great idea would get killed in a boardroom previously.
Mhm.
And in this case, like great ideas just thrived. And it was like, okay, let's try it. And if it didn't work, we try something else. And I love the fact that because it was a smaller, company, less people, we really had that nimbleness, that very entrepreneurial feel to how we ran our campaigns, how we operated as a business. And little did I know that would give me a great foundation for my future.
And you had a lot of autonomy.
100%. You know what? I think I worked at that time. I've worked with a lot of talented people over the course of my career, but I think I can honestly say that a time in my career, I worked with so many talented people at one time. And I think it was the people for me that I remember the most. And I was, eventually we got to work together. And I think, I just really look for, I really respect that I got a chance to work with people who shared the same kind of vision and culture that was important to me.
And as you said to me in the pre-interview, and we put in the little opening, that was your dream job. You had
Absolutely.
talented people you're working with, exciting products to put out there, some autonomy in what you were doing, and
And we
you
got to
know,
work from home, right? So I think part of the other selling point at the time wasn't just, family came first. That was huge. But it was also the flexibility to work from anywhere. It was new to me that everybody at a company got a laptop. Like that's a pretty standard thing nowadays. But at that time, I came from a desktop environment. And so it was really like, no, if you need to work from home, your kid is sick, something's, family emergency, you have the ability to work from anywhere. And it was very encouraged and very, made to be very normal within our work environment. Business meetings and things that were happening, you knew, okay, so and so is dialing in from home, or, and I look back at the time that was very rare. So we're at a time right now in human history where a lot of people are working from home. But at that time, especially in the industry we're in, it was not common at all. In fact, I would say it wasn't, I don't think anyone was really doing that within the broadcast industry.
well, Jeffrey Elliott, who started that company, who I knew from my days at TSN, was always a very forward thinker
A
and
100%.
a really human person. He had that in common, and he was friends with my bosses at High Fidelity HD TV,
Yes.
John Panikar and Ken Murphy. Um, and that was my dream job. And we got to know each other when both our companies were bought and merged. And
100%.
what was that experience like for you?
So, talking about Jeffrey, I mean, Jeffrey is still and always has been, I think, just to your point, very much a visionary. And I think a leader that, someone who's looking to, create their own business and grow their own business. He's someone that inspired me and was really a role model on, hey, you can be a great leader and have a thriving company and be a good person and treat your staff with respect and all of those things at the same time. So I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity, because as things merged, as things happen with business transactions, he was less involved in those day-to-day things. And now there was, a new team in town that was much more corporate, much more traditional. And I think it just really set the tone for kind of what was to come in terms of those changes. And we started to slowly lose a bit of that entrepreneurial feel as we became more corporate, which is very standard, I think, when businesses merge and get bigger, which is usually the goal, right, is to
Hmm.
grow. But I think one of the downfalls of growth is that sometimes, you take something that was really special, you actually lose a little piece of that as you grow and get bigger. So I think that's a real challenge that companies have as they grow, is kind of keeping what was special about those initial companies, both the one that you came from and the one that I came from, right? They both had their individual little quirks of what made them unique and special in the marketplace.
Well, you're right. I mean, I was so impressed with the talent that was coming in from Glassbox and the esprit de corps. But even with our company, High Fidelity, when we moved from a smaller building into the building that we were both in. We went from one floor to many floors, and
Yeah.
even the geography of that change can change the culture. And somebody bought our companies. They paid a lot of money for it. They'd had success in the industry, and they
Yes.
wanted to do things their way. And it's like it's in a Bruce Springsteen lyric. There's different people coming down here, and they see things in a different way. Um,
Absolutely, and it doesn't mean it's a bad way. It's just a very different approach to, I think, anyone that's working within that environment. It was just a very different approach and a different feel because, it was more corporate. And that's just kind of a standard thing when, you're slowly growing to the level, but you're now, you're not this, small, mighty
mhm.
company. You're a much larger company with, as you said, many more floors, and it presents all sorts of cultural challenges that are hard for any company to really deal with, right? Like, how do you go from having all of your team on a floor where you can see each other every day and talk to each other and feel connected, to having everybody on different floors where you haven't maybe seen those people in a few days?
Yeah, and coming from a small company where naturally you have a lot of autonomy, and the bosses you worked with have a lot of confidence in you, and now there's new bosses in there that don't know you, and you have to re-earn that trust, which all makes sense. But it can be, I mean, that's a hard transition.
Yeah, and I think it was just, very different approaches to leadership, very different approaches to managing teams and all of that. And part of what gets lost in that corporate environment is really that focus on the individual as part of the whole, right? There's such a focus on the end goals and the success of the company, but we forget how the spokes on that wheel all come together to make it happen.
Mhm.
And so I feel like a lot of those individual talented people got lost in the shuffle of realizing what they were bringing to the table that made those two initial companies so special.
So, needless to say, anytime you go from your dream job to a different one, there's a lot of change. Uh, the experience wasn't as enjoyable as it was for you previously. Um, how did you deal with that?
Well, it was very hard because I had really purposely left the corporate space, and then, to go to a smaller company and have that experience, and then it became a corporate space, within the span of really, I'd say, a year, right? So it was, I think it was a hard transition because I had so enjoyed that small, nimbleness of where I had first started with Glassbox. And so it was difficult, and I think it brought in a lot more focus on kind of what it really mattered. So once you kind of have a taste of something that's really amazing and special and unique, it's really hard to just accept anything that's less than that. And so, I mean, the company grew, we worked on some exciting projects and all of that after the merge. And, I still have great memories and great times of working with that team, our team and all of that. But I think what I realized was started to slowly happen is I was spending less and less time with my family, because there was less kind of flexibility to work from home.
Hmm.
So I'd be at the office sometimes until 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, depending what we're working on. And I was just starting to really miss that connection with my family. And, my son was very young. And I realized I kind of needed to change things up. This wasn't going to work for me. And I was just getting more and more stressed, there was more projects and, less resources, it felt like sometimes, because as companies are growing, they don't always, they're not always invested in hiring tons of extra people, but sometimes more shows to promote, more things like that, right? So it was very, very stressful. And I think that's over the course of that year of the change, I started really focusing on talking to people that ran their own businesses and kind of started to plant a little seed of, what else might be out there.
Well, you had a very interesting seed planted by a fortune teller. What happened
Yes.
there?
The funny thing is, it wasn't even someone I met. So my dad had been from a number of different people told he had to go see this one psychic, and he'd never done anything like that in his life. So I think kind of on a gag, he went and did it. And he was allowed at the end to ask questions about each of his daughters. And I guess when he got to me, she said, she's thinking of starting a business. You need to tell her to do it. She's going to be very successful. And I still get emotional even just thinking about it, because that moment when he told me that story, and it was just, from that day when he had visited her, I just remember the goosebumps that I was feeling, because I hadn't really told him that I was thinking of starting a business. He didn't know that. So it wasn't like something where he could have asked a specific question, or, there was some sort of influence in why she said that, right? And so that moment was really powerful. And then, I remember kind of driving home after hearing that and thinking, yeah, maybe that's what I need to do. And then immediately it was like, you're going to listen to a psychic you never even met? How crazy are you? This is insane. Like, of course not. Like, this isn't the time, down the road. But of course, the universe had other plans.
And your drive home, you've got this idea planted. I don't believe in that fortune telling stuff, but I certainly do believe things can be suggested to you and they get the wheels working. So you hear this, you get home, you talk to your husband and say, hey, listen, my dad just told me this crazy story about the fortune teller. What was his reaction?
So I told him that story, and I told him that, I was kind of thinking about it, and he was like, okay. And he didn't, at that point, it was more just like, I said it, but I wasn't really, I didn't really mean it in a sense of like, I was kind of still laughing and it wasn't really until the next day, because the next day I arrived at work and everything had been restructured. Some of the team members that I had really valued and enjoyed working with had been let go. And I saw a very different future for me within the company. And it was that moment that really made me realize maybe this is the right time. And so that next day, I drove home from work thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to say, to my husband? He's gonna, like, I'm going to leave my job that's, still going pretty good by most people's definitions. Just to the unknown, to some, like, I have a young kid at home. How is he ever going to accept this? And I'm really, really thankful I came home and I talked to him about how I was feeling. And he knew the plan had always been to start a business. But I think both of us really felt like initially it was just going to be much later in my career. So when I told him, I was kind of bracing for the now is not the greatest time. And really, I think I still to this day am blown away by just the support he offered in that moment. It was like, yeah, you should do it. Then let's do it. And it never was really a question. So I'm really grateful that I had that support, because I know not a lot of people do always when they make decisions to take a leap of faith and a risk.
Well, I mean, there's a couple things there. One, you obviously married well, and obviously he did too, because he had a lot of confidence in you. And I think anybody listening so far can tell why. So I remember when you told us you were going, and it wasn't to start a marketing company, it was to start a photography company. Why did you make that choice?
So I had always been really passionate about photography, and then I hadn't been taking pictures for a while, for a number of years while my career was growing, and then I'd say about a year or two before I ended up leaving the last job I had. I had started to get back into photography, and there was a moment where I was just photographing a birthday party for essentially a stranger. It wasn't anyone that I had known previous to that. And just being there in that moment, the love that was in the room and what was happening at the time, I realized this is the feeling and the joy that I should have every day in my job. I want to do this more. And I mean, I love photography. It's still something I do. But at the time, I felt like this is what I want to do full time. And I think at the time, I was also feeling just really burnt out. If I look back, I was stressed and burnt out. And I just needed a change of scenery. So that was my focus initially when I decided to leave and start my business.
And as sometimes happens, the universe had other plans for you too. How did marketing come back into your life?
So it's funny because when I left, I assumed that at some point someone might ask me to do, freelance PR marketing here and there. But really, in my own mind, I was done. I felt like I had done it all. I don't need to do it anymore. I'm really going to focus on photography. And what happened is a large client essentially kind of fell on my lap. And it was a project I was really excited about. It was in a completely different industry. So it was packaged food, which I'd never worked in. I'd obviously worked in entertainment pretty much my whole career. And, but I'd worked on food shows. So it was something that I still felt familiar enough with the content and all of that. And after doing that project, it was a project we ended up winning a huge award for. And it really was kind of, I'd say, the turning point of me realizing I'm not ready to give up PR and marketing. I really love this. And the joy and the passion came back. And I realized, A, I had just needed probably a bit of a break. But B, the change of industry and being able to help clients in a different space where it wasn't the same thing I'd done before. I wasn't just marketing TV shows and that kind of thing. I was able to now work with different kinds of clients and learn new things and learn new industries. And I think that was an aspect I had started to lose previously, is just that learning curve, right? We need to always be challenging ourselves and learning more. And so once I had that opportunity, I realized I'm not ready to give this up. And Lamb Creative Group was born from there.
So this opportunity presents itself. You are, loaded for bear. You get this great opportunity. It's a new thing, which is always exciting and makes you learn. You pulled on all the experience that you had had in the past. You hired the people you wanted to work with. You did it the way you wanted to do it. And you won this gigantic award for that. But not only that, when we talked earlier, you said you had certain expectations for the campaign, and they were exceeded. What were your expectations and what was actualized?
So I remember talking to one of my colleagues that I'd brought on. I'd worked with her in the past in the TV space. Actually, I'd hired her in the past to help on campaigns. So I knew she was great. I knew we worked together well. And so we had kind of talked about, listen, the client was really looking for 2, 3 kind of national hits. They'd had only, and I'll say that's like, pick up in national media, right? TV, radio kind of thing, for those that might not be familiar with the PR world. And so we're kind of like sussing it out, and we're like, well, they really only want, in fact, actually, I think what they wanted was 1 or 2. They really had just said, I think 1, they would dance around the office because they'd never had that. And then what ended up happening, so we said, you know what, I think we can do 3. Like 3 we could totally do with both of our experience and all of that.
That'd be knocking it out of the park for them, right?
That would, for them, it would be knocking it, and it was already exceeding their expectations. We ended up getting over 100 different media pickups in almost every major TV station, print outlet, like it was everywhere. And so when we ended up winning the CPRS ACE Award, Gold ACE Award, it was still a little bit mind-blowing because we literally, as we were going to, were told that we were nominated and we were up for winning that category. We barely had a logo, like we literally, it was so new, so fresh, and we were kind of scrappy and out there, getting business working. We barely had a logo. So I still remember the logo that you see that, the night that it was won, that was like, I think had been only in effect for maybe 24 to 48 hours before the ceremony. So that's how fresh it was. And nobody knew who Lamb Creative Group was. And we were literally going up against every major PR, boutique firm in the city, right? Not even boutique, some were large and not boutique. So it was a little overwhelming.
How did that change things?
I think, you know what? I think it gave us the credibility that, we may be small, we may not be that well known yet, but we obviously do great work. I think for me, it gave me the confidence to know that I was on the right path. I was doing work that was impactful, that was, helping my clients in the way that they were very appreciative of and was helping move their business forward. So I think it was just that extra motivation to keep going and realize I totally can do this.
And the clients started coming, right?
After, yeah, I would say from the award forward, it really changed the business because now we weren't just some business no one had heard of. We had this little feather in our cap. And we had the proof that we get results, right? So it really helped, I would say, just in talking to future clients, and that at the end of the day, I'll say, like, we were a legit business, right? And I say that because I know so many business owners, as they get started, it's like you don't really feel legit at the beginning, right? It's like, oh, I'm just getting going. I'm still just this, like, team of, a few. I don't have a big fancy office. And I think at the beginning, we all go through that feeling of, is this legit? Like, is this a real thing? And so it was really that, I think that, affirmation that absolutely, for us and for clients.
And you said no office. And there's one story you told me I think is a fantastic story about being in front of a potential client with another marketing person, and they asked about your office. Can you just share that story with us?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start off to say that my vision from the very beginning was always to not have an office. I really enjoyed the work from home experience, and I could see with our team, we could work really well collaboratively using the digital tools available to us and meeting together as we needed to. So that was always the vision. And so then we were actually in a brainstorm with a current client, but with their other agencies that were involved in other aspects of the business. And at one point during the meeting, like as an aside, one of the people from one of the agencies had asked me, "So where's your office?" And it was the first time I think I had really formally been asked that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, I shared we didn't have one. We all work remote and all of that. And I was super excited about it because I thought it was pretty cool. And then later on, that same person decided to ask me the exact same question, but this time in an elevator with the client. So it was
Mm-hmm.
really obvious that the intention was to kind of show the client, we didn't have an office and we're not,
Mm-hmm.
to poke holes, I'd say, a little bit. And it was this first moment where I really stepped up and realized I could own this. Like, and so I basically answered the person and said, no, we don't have an office. We intend to never have an office. We'd prefer to, our clients see the full return of their investment go straight to the campaign, and we don't intend to ever have an office. And I think that person's face kind of dropped, their mouth may have dropped on the floor because I don't think that was the answer they were, expecting. And the client didn't really care because it wasn't, listen, what do they care where you do your work, right?
Right.
And so, but that moment for me was that realization of, I don't need to shy away from those type of questions. The work we do stands for itself, and it really doesn't matter where we work. Our team does great work, whether we're at home, whether I'm in an office space or I'm at a park, it doesn't matter. And our clients didn't care. So it really was the validation I think I needed, that I'm still just as legitimate and just as savvy of a business owner working from any location than you may be just in an office space.
Well, I look at your story and, here's what I see. I see someone who saw, worked for an inspirational, forward thinking person. They enjoyed their dream job when things weren't working out. They took the cues that they were given and turned them into their own opportunity, which is a brave thing to do, really brave thing to do. And then created the kind of place that you liked working in. There was a story that I like to tell when I worked at Discovery Channel, and our leader came in and said, I'd stayed in this job longer than I wanted to because this place was Camelot. And she left and things changed. And I've always thought about the story of Camelot. I thought it was appropriate. And have you seen Camelot?
I don't think so, no, but I'm somewhat familiar with it.
At the end of Camelot, King, after he's built this idealized place and it's destroyed by the baser instincts of humankind, he is going to battle against his friends because he was undermined by relatives. And he's standing before the battle. King Arthur is crushed. And a young boy comes up and starts talking about the ideals of Camelot and this beautiful, wonderful place. And Arthur says to him, I'm making you a knight, and your job is to stay behind the lines and stay alive and take the idea of Camelot forward. And that's really what Camelot is. It's an idea. And if we can all find these little Camelots in our lives, and even though they won't last, and they can't last, we can take that forward and build our own Camelots, then we've realized the dream. And I believe that is what you have done in the way that you have run your career and lived your life. And I think, Nikki Lamb Tudico, that is what makes you a business hero.
Well, thank you. You know what? I think you couldn't have said that better. And I think, it's up to all of us to kind of, I think, take from the role models and leaders that inspire us, build something that we're really proud of, and inspire the next generation to take a piece with them into their venture.
And you have done that resoundingly well. Thank you very much for spending time and telling us your story. And you're one of the most inspirational people I know. You're one of the first people I looked up when I was on my own and wanted to figure out how to get it done. All your pictures, you're smiling, and I've really never had any interactions with you when you weren't smiling. And thank you for being here, and thank you for being a business hero.
Thank you for having me. This has been amazing. I'm happy to share my story. And I think just spend some time here with you. Really, this has been fantastic.
Excellent. Thanks. The Business Heroes wants to hear your story. Contact me at craig@colbyvision.net. I guarantee your story will sound epic with this cool music underneath it. Colby Vision can help you find and share your story. Writing, video, we do it all. We can also show you how to do your own simple videos and teach you how to do interviews for a podcast. Thanks to Dave White for the editing, Tim Vesely for the music, and Kevin Francisco for the graphics. And thanks for watching The Business Heroes. We'll see you next time for another exciting adventure.